Hi, my name is Lisa Oda, and I'm the head of content at Upwork. I manage our own channels, our blog, and hiring headquarters. And while promoting our guest author program that's connected to the hiring headquarters, I connected with Larry Kim, master marketer and best in class content whiz. Thank you for joining the Unicorn Marketing webinar. And a little bit about Larry. In case you haven't noticed, he's everywhere. Larry Kim is the CEO of Mobile Monkey, a leading Facebook Messenger marketing platform. He's also the founder of WordStream, the world's biggest PPC marketing software company. He is, in addition to those two things, an Upwork customer who employs freelancers from writers, designers, and more. Not finally, but he's a top columnist at Inc. Magazine, CNBC, and is the 8th ranked blogger on Medium. Not sure when you sleep, Larry, but to reach the ranks of the marketing elite, Larry has employed solid tactics and strategies for content marketing, and he's here to share some of those tips with you today. So to kick this off, Larry, as a fellow content marketer, I'd love to have you talk about your philosophy and the channels, formats, talent, and hacks or tips which drive your success. So take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Thank you, Lisa, for hosting this event. I'm just going to on the agenda today, we've got, talking a lot about unicorns. We'll just kick things off with a theory of unicorn marketing, as well as a discussion on the differences between donkeys and unicorns, followed by some of the latest and greatest technology in unicorn and donkey detection, as well as some additional concepts like making unicorn babies. Just in case you thought you were on the wrong webinar, I assure you, you are on the right webinar. We will be talking about content marketing. We just themed it using this unicorn metaphor to aid with the recall. Okay, so on with our story. Oh, sorry, before getting into all the details, a little bit about myself. I am slightly obsessed with unicorns, having started a International Unicorn Marketing Association. Just kidding. I'm from Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's a famous area where, I don't know, Facebook was started here, Microsoft was started here. My house is just to the right of this picture. And basically, it's also where I started my last business, WordStream. I started it as an internet marketer, kind of like, basically sort of like a Upwork contractor working out of a Panera Bread. But we got a lot of customers and I ended up becoming the world's largest PPC software company, PPC marketing software company, managing about $1 billion of ad spend for tens of thousands of customers. We also moved out of the bakery a few years ago. Last thing about myself, I started this bot company, chatbots are, if you haven't heard of these things, it's kind of just like a way of interfacing with like internet services, like businesses, but through chat, like Messenger, for example, rather than using a mobile website. We've created this WYSIWYG editor to create these experiences as opposed to having to write any software. Right, and I have a 3-year-old kid. You can follow him on Twitter, hashtag PPC kid. We've got another one due in like 4 weeks. All right, enough about me. Back to our story. We're talking about the crazy unicorn theory of marketing. And basically the problem is that most of it is going nowhere. 98% of content marketing efforts go nowhere. And I think I know why this is the case. The reason is I'm not trying to be critical here. Like even if you look at my own content that I produce every day, for example, I produced 300 pieces of content in 2017. About 8 articles did fantastically well, but the remaining 292 basically went nowhere. And so, that's a pretty high failure rate, like 97.4% donkey rate with just 2.6% unicorns. And the question is, why is this happening? Now, a lot of times when I ask my friends, other expert marketers, they just give me these dumb platitudes. They say things like, Larry, you should stop producing so much content and instead focus on the quality. But the problem is these platitudes are like every piece that I write, I actually put a lot of time and effort into, and usually I think that they're great ideas, because otherwise why would I put in the time and effort towards doing them in the first place? So I think it's not just about like these dumb, like, focus on quality kind of platitudes. I think there is something more serious at stake. That what's happening, in my belief, is that Google and Facebook algorithms are dramatically changing how traffic is being distributed to people's content, and they are basically rewarding unicorns and punishing donkeys. And so, of course, Facebook and Google matter a great deal because that's probably how like 67 or 80% of your site traffic originates from one of those two places. And so just to prove this theory to you, I just want to show you a couple data points. This is traffic to the top 10 posts of the month at Inc. magazine. So if you look at the green line, that's the flat line at the bottom, you can see in August of 2015, the top 10 posts of the month, it was kind of a tie. Like everyone got more or less the same amount of traffic. It was like communism, okay? Everyone is equal. In August of 2016, you start to see like, the top 3 posts of the month that are pulling away. And then if you look at 2017, August, the top 2 posts of the month got more traffic than everything else combined. And that is just crazy. So, there's something going on here in terms of traffic distribution. It's not just traffic, it's also about the number of social shares. So if you look at the top posts of the year for 2015. Again, it was like, this is across all the different channels, Facebook, Twitter, etc., LinkedIn. It was kind of communist in 2015. Every post kind of had more or less the same number of shares. And then in 2016, things start to go crazy. The top 2 posts of the year got more shares than every other article combined. So what the heck is going on here? I think there is definitely something changing with these algorithms that distribute traffic and shares, and I'd like to introduce a new concept or a new strategy called unicorn marketing. And basically, the bottom line is we're just trying to align sort of our definition of quote unquote quality to align with how these algorithms are designed to recognize and reward quality work. All right, so that's kind of the background in my theory of unicorn and donkeys, but we've been using these words interchangeably, kind of informally. What's the difference between donkeys and unicorns? Because we really need to nail down this definition, and basically the difference is one of both relative and cross-channel. So what do I mean by a relative and cross-channel difference? Well, let me explain this. Donkeys and unicorns are kind of a relative distinction. So what I mean by this is, say you had 129 status updates on your Facebook page. Okay, so this is real data from one of my customers. Like he's posted 129 things to his Facebook wall. Most of it is garbage. So like 97% of it is like, click-through rates of 0 to 1% or 1 to 2% or 2 to 3%. These are all donkeys. But on the other side, on the right side, you have these 3 magical status updates that did so well, 10 or 11 or 12% click-through rates, which are kind of like not just a little bit better than the rest, but it's actually 10 times better than average. You see what I'm saying? So this is kind of interesting because what it means is no matter how crappy your content is, or no matter how crappy your social media is, there's usually this distribution that you see where most of it is junk, but some of it actually does a lot better than the rest. Or put another way, no matter how crappy your stuff is, there's going to be a little bit that's less crappy than everything else. So this is an important point to take away. It's that no matter how good or bad you are at content marketing, there's always going to be differential performance amongst your campaigns, and a small percentage of them are going to do much better than the rest. We see this pattern across different channels, like cross-channel. It's not just about social media. You see this in blogging, for example. So if you were to look at your Google Analytics, you would find that 50 or 60% of your traffic comes from like 5, 10, or 15% of your content. So that's sort of the difference between the donkeys and the unicorns. It's the ones that are doing like 10 times better than the average. In terms of so the strategy here, sometimes people they kind of get confused. They think when I'm talking about unicorns, they think that I'm talking about getting viral hits. So unicorns are not the same as viral hits. Unicorns are your top 3%. Everyone has a top 3%, no matter how good or bad you are. Viral hits, on the other hand, is kind of like a suicide mission. It's extremely difficult to get, some viral video that gets 2 billion views. I mean, it happens, but it's I wouldn't call that a repeatable strategy that you can bank on. It's like trying to get rich by playing the lottery. And so the what's the difference between the donkeys and the unicorns? It has everything to do about the click-through rates. Okay, so click-through rates, it's kind of a sign of engagement. It's basically the universe is telling you whether or not your thing, your content is interesting or not. And the platforms have been using that signal of click-through rate as kind of the arbiter of quality for many, many years now. If you think of Google AdWords running like advertising campaigns on search keywords, that platform has always been about user engagement. The higher the click-through rate of the ads that you're running, the higher your quality score. The higher your quality score, the lower your cost per click, or conversely, the lower your click-through rate, the much your cost per click would be increased by as much as 400%. Twitter and Facebook ads, they kind of copied the same idea. When you're promoting a post on Facebook, as an ad, as a sponsored post, if that sponsored post is a piece of garbage with 1% engagement rate, well then it's going to be $3, $4, $5 a click. Whereas if you can get that engagement rate to 7 or 20 or 30 or 60%, what you'll find is that cost per click will fall dramatically. Not just a little bit, but like from $3 to 8 cents to 2 cents to fractions of a penny. I've gotten it to like less than like 1/100th of a penny. Okay. This is not just about advertising and paid social. This is a cross-channel phenomenon. Take for example organic search, like Google organic search. What's the relationship between click-through rates and rankings, and do click-through rates impact the organic search rankings? And the answer is yes. It used to be all about links and keywords, right? Getting all those link juice to your website and stuffing all those keywords in. But now the algorithms in the last 18 months have changed. They've introduced machine learning, and what the machine learning is doing is it's trying to see whether or not people are actually clicking on the things in the search results. If the listing has a higher than average click-through rate, we're finding that it is kind of floating to higher and higher positions. Whereas if you have a below than expected click-through rate, we notice that those listings will lose rankings. And this is just some snapshots from May, June, and September of the last year, and this trend has continued. All right, so not just about organic search, it's also about Facebook newsfeed. There's been huge changes in the newsfeed, but basically the click-through rate matters enormously. It's enormously important because every time you see something in your Facebook newsfeed, Facebook is actually auditioning that content to see whether or not you're interested in it or not. If you engage with it, you're more likely to see updates from that person in the future or that business. If you don't engage with it, you're just less likely to see anything from them in the future. I think hopefully overall, it's not just about Facebook and Google, it's also about conversion rates. So obviously we're doing all this content marketing, not just to get readers, but hopefully to get people to buy the products and services that we're selling. And so it's not just about getting more clicks, but it's also about converting them. And here what we find is that there's an enormous correlation between conversion rates, like signing up for a white paper or a webinar. We find that more people, the higher the click-through rate, the higher the conversion rate. So if you can get people super excited about your products and services, that excitement tends to carry through to a completed action on your site. So when we're doing kind of this unicorn anatomy, trying to figure out what's the common denominator across, the high performing, organic search campaigns, the high performing AdWords campaigns, the high converting offers, and the stuff that does really well on social media. The one thing they all have in common is an unusually high click-through rate. And the reason why they have that in common, it's like why that's correlated with success is not a coincidence. It's because all these platforms of Google and Facebook, both the paid and organic sides of these systems, they employ these machine learning algorithms that kind of specifically seek out high engagement content and reward it with much greater visibility within the platform, whether that be like more exposure in the news feed or higher rankings in the search results page, or just lower cost per clicks as advertising campaigns. So in terms of unicorn marketing or content marketing, I think that if there was one metric that you should be really obsessing and focusing over, it would be click-through rates, because that really plays a huge deterministic role in figuring out whether or not the content's going to do well or not. I'm just going to take a break here. Lisa, any questions from you so far of anything you've seen here?
No, I think you can keep going. We're gathering questions, and we'll bring those up at the end when we have time.
Awesome. So we're part 3 already, donkey and unicorn detection. So the problem here is that even if what I'm describing to you makes a lot of sense, marketers are extremely bad at kind of discerning donkeys from unicorns, because 9 out of 10 marketers suffer from donkey denial syndrome. And basically what that means is they think their crap doesn't stink, and they think that everything they work on, just because they worked on it, it must be a unicorn. You know, even myself, like 97% of the stuff that I produce are donkeys, and only 3% is actually unicorns. And so, you know, the problem is most of us are biased. And so what is needed is a way to figure out the donkeys from the unicorns to eliminate the biases, because a lot of times we think we have a unicorn, but instead it's maybe a rhinoceros or a triceratops or some mosquito or some other creature that is actually not a unicorn. And so this is what we've come up with. It's a donkey detector. It's super easy to use and tries to discern whether we have a unicorn or just a donkey with a plunger on its head. And the idea here, it's a pyramid scheme. Don't worry, it is not illegal. You will not go to jail for using this donkey detection pyramid scheme. The idea is to produce a tremendous amount of ideas and campaigns in the most lightweight way as possible. Okay, you can then measure the user engagement rates for those campaigns, whether they be tweets or blog posts or video campaigns or infographics. Like, you just produce a lot of them, and then you see which ones did well. The first thing you need to do after you've measured the engagement rates is you need to kill the donkeys, metaphorically. Like, no, don't worry, no donkeys were harmed in this presentation. But basically, the idea here is to kill the donkeys, meaning if you blast an email campaign to 10,000 names and you have like a 5% open rate, like, and your boss says, well, maybe if we buy a list and we send it to another 100,000 names, it'll do better. No. You got to say no to that, and you just say, like, you know, if it didn't do well, you know, in the first 5,000, it's not going to do any better in the next 100,000 or whatever. You see what I'm saying? So you need to kind of cut your losses and try to instead come up with a better idea. And so, you know, you keep doing this over and over until you do find an idea that sticks, at which point you need to sound the unicorn alert and make unicorn babies. I will describe that in just a moment. But in terms of what's a good engagement rate, like how do you know what's the cutoff between the donkey and the unicorn? Remember, it's all about a relative difference between, you know, engagement rates like click-through rates. So high engagement versus low engagement donkeys, the difference is the click-through rate. So say you ran a bunch of email campaigns, you could kind of stack rank them, all right? Like if you were doing like two email blasts every week, you could kind of come up with a scoreboard of like how all your different ideas performed, and then you could focus in on the ones that have like 30 or 40 or 46% open rates versus, you know, and then kind of not focus on the ones that do like 10 or 5% open rates. You know, the same thing with your offers. Like, I know a lot of companies have like 100 different downloadable offers like on their website. Like, do you really need 100 of those things? No, because all you need is one good one. Like, you need a good offer. So the typical, you know, conversion rate of white papers and demo requests and webinars, it's typically around 2% on the internet. But the top 10% of offers, they actually convert at 11.45% or above. I know this because I have billions of dollars of ad spend under management, the idea here is when you do find an interesting offer that seems to be kind of sticking, you should actually kill off all the other donkey offers and just stick with the one that's working. So the Unicorn Marketing Power Law just says that most of the value, like 85% of the value of your marketing efforts, comes from a small amount of the campaigns. And basically, we're just talking about stack ranking these different campaigns, looking at the top 3%, and then just focusing and going all in on these things, because those are the ones that are going to operate the best across all the different marketing channels. So, Lisa, any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, we do have one question, and one of the questions is around when you reference killing donkeys, does that mean removing some of the posts, or do we just learn from them?
So you don't. So first of all, it's a metaphor. We're not doing any harm to donkeys, but but Lisa, if you have a donkey, then like a donkey blog post or something, then it's already invisible. Like it won't rank for anything. It's not going to show up in the social news feed if you post it. You see what I'm saying? It won't perform well if you try to use it in an email blast or as an ad campaign, and it won't convert if by some miracle if people actually find this thing somehow. So it's already invisible. So you don't have to delete it because it's not gonna perform. But what I am saying is that you need to just stop trying to tweak this thing, like trying to put lipstick on a donkey, like we're like, oh, what if we spend some more money and push this harder? You know what I mean? Like the dumb ideas, like the poor ideas, if you have a 1% click-through rate or 2% click-through rate, basically the universe is saying 99% of people find this to be uninteresting, and so you should move on. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question we received, is there a rule of thumb for how long you should wait to boost a regular post on your social media page?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't boost anything unless it had unusually strong engagement rates, like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% click-through rates. Like if it's like 1% or 0.5% click-through rate, you're just throwing away money. In terms of how long to wait to towards before boosting it, you can figure this stuff very quickly within the first 400 impressions. So that kind of depends on how big of a following you have. But you can how that it is, Lisa, when you tweet something, it goes nowhere, but every once in a while you tweet something that goes crazy, and that kind of reveals itself very quickly, usually within minutes or hours. Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right, so we're moving on to part 4, which is the unicorn alert and making unicorn babies. Don't worry if you've never heard of these concepts. I've just totally made them up. Basically, what I'm talking about here is, remember how I was saying, like, Lisa, there was like 8 stories that did really well and then 292 that went nowhere. So this was my unicorn for last year. It was like 5 big changes coming to AdWords, everything you need to know. So normally my blog posts might get like 200 or 300 shares on social media. This one got tens of thousands of shares on social media. Normally my posts might get like 500 to 1,000 views. This one got 100,000 views. Okay, so we're talking like not just a little bit better, but like 100 times better than average. So as soon as I created this post, I kind of knew that this was a unicorn because within minutes it had gotten more clicks and more comments and more shares than anything else does. And so the worst thing that people can do is they say, congratulations everyone, we found this unicorn. Now let's go look at the calendar. Oh, it's April, so we need to do something about preparing your taxes, or we need to do something about, I know, the NHL playoffs or something like this. Like you have all this stuff kind of scheduled, and you're kind of on this content marketing treadmill where you're just like you're a slave to this treadmill, and you just need to go to the next campaign. Instead, I think that's a terrible idea. What you should do is stop what you're doing. You should get rid of the calendar, clear the calendar, and instead sound the unicorn alert. Okay, that's just telling all your colleagues, wait a minute, I have an interesting idea here that seems to be performing very well. So you turn on that light on your roof and make unicorn babies. So what's a unicorn baby? A unicorn baby is just comes in a lot of different forms. Here's a unicorn baby example. It's a guest post. So a guest post could be a contributed article on the same topic. Like just take the same topic. If it did so well on your own blog, well then chances are it's going to do well elsewhere. Like you could maybe write it up for Search Engine Journal, because that's the space that I operate in, it got 12,100 reads. Their typical story does about 500, so this is 24 times better than usual. Their typical stories get around 300 shares. It got 2,300 shares, so that's like 8 times better than usual. And it was their top story for the month. And of course, I knew it was going to be their top story of the month, like absolutely knew with 100% certainty, because if the idea did well in one blog, well, of course it's going to do well on some other blog because it's so catchy. There's a couple other forms of unicorn babies. There it is. A second example of a unicorn baby is a follow-up story. So this is where you take the hot topic and you kind of see where that story goes by exploring the topic in greater depth. So in this case, the original unicorn article was something like 5 new features coming to AdWords. It was a pretty stupid article. It was just a list of 5 new features that they announced. I didn't really go into great depth on any of the 5 because, you try to keep the stories maybe 800 or 900 words or something like that. So what I did was I just wrote 5 follow-up stories, 5 baby unicorns, 1 for each feature that fully explored the topic in greater detail. And of course, each one of these unicorn babies, here's another one, expanded text ads, 10 things you need to know. That just takes one of those features and explores it in great detail. These are getting thousands of shares. And hundreds of thousands of views, which is just as good performance as the original unicorn. And of course, that's expected because you're kind of just doing a follow-up story on an extremely hot topic. Another form of unicorn baby creation is this concept of infographification or videoification of content. So I love infographics. I love videos. Unfortunately, they do take a lot of time and effort, or some additional time and effort, as opposed to just like writing a little tweet or creating a quick blog post. So it's kind of a bummer when you spend all this time and effort creating the video and the infographic and it goes nowhere. And so what I do is I de-risk the operation or de-risk the campaign by only creating videos and infographics for the proven topics. So the ones that have kind of proven themselves to be unicorns, I can then create these things quickly and then just have reasonable confidence that they will perform well because they're based on a story or topic that has already proven itself. Let me give you an example of this. So I wrote the #2 article on SEO for Search Engine Land in 2016. It was pretty amazing because usually, these best of the year roundups kind of, it's the stories that get published at the beginning of the year that kind of have decisive advantages because they've been kind of out there for longer. So I published this one in October, and it was just a guide to raising your click-through rates, and it was their #2 story, and I knew this was going to be the case because it was a visual representation of a article that had gone really hot on my personal blog. You see what I'm saying? So, in terms of how to operationalize this strategy, it is extremely critical. And I'm not an affiliate or anything like this. They're not paying me to say this, but this is my personal marketing strategy. It is extremely important that you have kind of a small army of contractors of Upwork talent that you've worked with in the past, whether it be like bloggers who can help rework some copy for a guest post, or graphic designers who can take the ideas in a blog post and turn it into a mini graphic, or video talent who can take these ideas and animate them with perhaps some additional commentary. But you really need to have the ability to quickly scale up your marketing efforts around the few topics that do spectacularly well in order to support the unicorn baby creation efforts. And so that's why I use Upwork. Another area where I use them is in webinar and conference presentations. So like the graphics for these different presentations. So when I found the unicorn baby, Okay, I told my marketing team, we're not going to just go to the next thing on the content calendar, like March Madness or April showers or something dumb like that. I told them, like, we're going to stick with this topic. We're going to do a webinar on this topic tomorrow, and so that we blasted the newsletter list with this invitation. It was, everything you need to know about these changes, and it did spectacularly well. It got 5,000 registrations. The reason why I got 5,000 registrations is because GoToWebinar actually has a limit of 5,000 registrations. Otherwise, it breaks. And so, the thing about unicorns is you never know how much more you can squeeze out of these high-performing campaigns. So I told my team, let's do the same webinar tomorrow. And they thought I was crazy because, like, they were asking, like, don't you want to change the title? Don't you want to, like, create some new content? And I was like, nope, I'm not going to change anything because it's working. So we unsubscribed. We removed the attendees, but the couple thousand attendees, but we just blasted the list again the next day and got another 5,000 registrations out of this effort. You see what I'm saying? And so we just kept on doing this over and over and over 5 times on this one topic, and we ended up generating something like 71% of the registrations for the entire webinar marketing channel for this company in that year came from one webinar and its like various encore performances with very slight tweaks and changes to the repertoire, if you will, and so. It's not just about getting more value, it's also about doing less work, right? Because I could have told my team, like, yeah, you know what, we got this unicorn, let's do something completely different. Well, that would take another week of work to create a new content, new ideas and stuff, and 97% of these things go nowhere. So the flip side is like, or you could just do a repeat of a proven idea, which means the incremental work is zero, and that it will do better than average because it has proven itself. Another fantastic way of getting more leverage out of your content marketing is to boost the performance, boost the exposure of your unicorns using pay-per-click advertising and social media advertising. Also another area of expertise where there's plenty of talent in Upwork around online advertising talent and contractors. Basically, the idea here is that if you're boosting posts that are hot, like this one here with Homer Simpson, you end up getting a very low cost per click. So instead of paying $3 a click, this was paying 1 penny a click because everyone was clicking on it. So I was getting these algorithmic fairy points. It's the same thing on Twitter ads. This same thing. AdWords changes coming soon with looks like Noah and the flood kind of image that I used here. And I was getting a 6.8% click-through rate, which is much higher than the typical 0.1% click-through rate. And so the cost per result here on Twitter ads was around 6 cents per click, which is better than paying $3 or $4 or $5. So hopefully that clarifies this concept of making unicorn babies and sounding the unicorn alert. Lisa, I'm just curious if you had any thoughts or questions about the idea.
I did have a question, and it was around the contributed content because I think that's how we connected. Any advice to folks who are considering contributed content to websites? And then we do have one other question after this from one of our listeners.
Sure. The blogging, it's hard because you don't know exactly which topics are going to resonate. So you should definitely be employing contractors to help you with your publishing. And when they do find a really hot idea that is doing well, you should employ even more contractors to squeeze more out of those successful campaigns. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yes, definitely. Another question we have is there a software you prefer to use to measure your social media posts?
Oh, it's all in Facebook. It's just Twitter Analytics for Twitter, and it's Facebook Insights for Facebook. There's an analytics tab on both of those social platforms that you can just look at the performance of your recent tweets. Although it's also pretty obvious, like, like if my typical Twitter thing gets around, 20, 30, 40 retweets, but if something gets like 500 or 1,000 retweets, well, then you've got something interesting there.
Yes. One more question is, based on your experience, do you think it's a bad idea to have a one-page website since the bounce rate will always be high?
Um, well, uh, I've seen some unusual verticals where that works, um, where it's like a mile long. It's like infomercially. I think it works in a few industries, but generally I would prefer to have a couple more pages.
Okay, great. And then just one last question. Is it definitive that higher click-through rate will lead to better placement in search engines? Like, is that actually a known fact, or is this something that, is kind of more observational?
Google denies it, but their PR spokespeople deny it. But keep in mind that the PR spokespeople, they don't always know how this stuff really works. Like they're not the engineers who are working on it. They're just, PR spokespeople. But mostly I'm saying this based on like volumes and volumes of data that I've and tests that I've run myself. I feel comfortable staking my reputation on this, and it's very easy for you to test out yourself. You just find a piece of content that was kind of ranking, but not getting a lot of clicks, like a low click-through rate. You can get this data from Search Console, and if you were to try to make it a little bit more clicky by adding like emotional triggers and just making it more exciting, I think what you would find is the click-through rate would go up, which means more clicks, but you would also see more better rankings too. So it's just based on my data and dozens of other scientists, but not officially from Google.
Great. Okay, thank you very much for answering those questions.
Awesome. So I'll just wrap up today's presentation with some of my favorite hacks for 2018. What I define as a hack is kind of like, a lot of value for a little work, okay? As opposed to like, oh, well, you just have to do all this work, like shortcuts, basically. So number 6, it's the Russian ad targeting method. So, Facebook, obviously, you need to run ads these days, and the Russians, they were pretty sneaky people, but they also discovered kind of an interesting loophole within Facebook ads, and that is that certain types of topics do extremely well in Facebook ads. And I know this because I did an experiment. I created a fake website called Citizens News Networks. It's not a real news site. It's completely fake. The logo is a backwards CNN logo, and this article here is completely fake. I just copied and pasted from a fake news website debunking site called Snopes. But anyways, I just created my fake website as an experiment. I boosted that fake post to some swing states targeting, certain conservative, demographics, and just to see what would happen. And I spent $50 promoting this post, and it generated like thousands of clicks, and all these comments like within minutes of posting this thing. Okay, it's like, see, can't you see this was happening, blah blah blah, like, so lots of engagement, lots of comments, lots of shares, tons of likes, and lots of website clicks for $50. So what am I suggesting here? I'm not saying that you should be creating fake news. That's awful. Don't do that. What I'm saying is there's cognitive dissonance is like this phenomenon that if you can figure out what are the topics related to your business that people believe to be true but don't have the evidence to substantiate those beliefs. If you can then produce that content that flatters their world biases, that will be shared and clicked on like crazy. And as we know, high click-through rates and engagement rates are the key to unicorns. Number 5, the inverted unicorn ad targeting method. So this is also a hack related to Facebook ad targeting. So it's a way to double or triple the click-through rates of your Facebook ads, which will dramatically improve the performance, the inverted unicorn. It's the opposite of conventional ad targeting. So in conventional ad targeting, normally you just take, very narrow audience definitions, like people with certain interests and behaviors and demographics, and you try to cast a very narrow net, and then try to maximize the engagement rate, because we're going after very specific people. As an example, say you're selling email marketing software, you might want to go after people who have interests in email marketing, but also have a job marketing titles, okay, or marketing job titles, sorry. And so by narrowing the audience and being very precise in the audience definition, you end up kind of hopefully improving the click-through rates. The problem is it doesn't work in a lot of industries where the products are extremely old or extremely boring, and like, people are telling me, like, how the heck am I supposed to get a 10% click-through rate on this stupid product that's like 20 years old or something? You know what I mean? And so what I suggest then is to employ the inverted unicorn, which is to target based on unrelated interests. Okay, so people who like email marketing, but people who also like Game of Thrones, like, fans of the Arya Stark fan page, or Sansa Stark, or Jon Snow, etc. So this might sound like a ridiculous strategy, but it is actually extremely powerful, because what it does is it allows you to create ad copy and experiences that appeal not to just one of the user's interests, but actually 2 or 3 or 4 interests. It's kind of like that old adage, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. Just because you pick a really narrow audience, that's perfect for you, doesn't mean they'll click on your stuff. But if you can make it super, super interesting by appealing to multiple interests, then there's a much better chance that they'll click. If you don't understand why these jokes are funny, you would have never seen this ad in the first place, because it's only going after Game of Thrones fans who are email marketing users or marketers. And what we're finding is this is driving tremendously low costs due to the unusually high engagement rate. So $1.36 click cost per 1,000, which is about 30 times lower than the average. I just wanted to share this notion of unicorn projection. It's also an ad targeting method. And so unicorn projection, it's just kind of this crazy way to get on the top of aggregator sites like Dig or Reddit or LinkedIn Pulse, etc. And so basically there's a hack, just as an example. Lisa, I don't know if you know about this hack. If you're an author, there's a hack to get on the New York Times bestseller list, and the hack is you just buy like 1,000 or 10,000 of your own books. Okay, you just buy them yourself, and what ends up happening is, because so many books get ordered, you end up debuting on the bestseller list. Okay, and then people then see, like, oh, there's this new book on the bestseller list, I should check it out. And so it just becomes kind of round and round we go, kind of like a machine learning loophole here. And so you can kind of do the same idea here with like Hacker News or Dig or Medium or LinkedIn Pulse or Reddit. They all work the same way. They're just trying to get a lot of engagement, like upvotes, within a short period of time, like within the last hour. And so I've gotten dozens of my pieces of content to rank on, subreddits like Life Hacks, which gets 500,000 views in just a few hours. And the way that I do this is I just send targeted ad traffic to it. So people who like Reddit and people who like Excel, because that article was about Microsoft Excel power hacks, and of course that made it so that people, it was like buying my own books. I'm sending traffic of people who are likely to upvote this thing on Reddit, and then it starts to trend on Reddit. Number 3 hack, we're talking about Facebook Messenger. Did you have a question there, Lisa?
No, I didn't, but I was thinking your life hack is great, because you can promote your content and you don't end up with 100 books at your house.
Yeah, well, it still costs like $100 to buy the ads to promote the posts, So All right, so the Facebook Messenger news hack is just like, it's a way to connect with your users through Facebook Messenger. So if you know here, more people use messaging apps than social media, and actually the open rates on email in the Facebook news feed, or the view rates of Facebook news feed, are pretty awful. But chat blasting is extremely visible, so it's a really important technology for content marketers because that's where their eyeballs are. And so um, I have this product, it's Mobile Monkey, and one of the features is this chat blaster where like you can blast all your messenger contacts. Like, so I'm just saying like, here's a, article on my top 7 posts for 2018. I blasted it to Neil Patel, some marketer guy. He read it because I can see his faces down there. And so basically, the rule is that you can chat blast anyone who messages your Facebook page. So like if you want to be kind, you can message me on Facebook, and you're basically opting into future messages. And what happens is when someone messages your page, you get their information, some basic information like their first and last name, gender, location, language, and profile photo. Okay. You also get the ability to message them back until they unsubscribe, and they just unsubscribe by typing stop or unsubscribe. And this is my chat blaster. This is the Mobile Monkey Facebook chat blaster, where you just create some content and you blast it to all the people who are subscribed. And these are worth much more than email contacts because they're like 10 times more likely to open and see the message than just the email subscribers. You can schedule them so that like just run them in the morning. The way that you collect contacts is by adding these little checkbox plug forms. It's a send to messenger. This is like a contact form on your website. Just add this plugin to get people to opt in to messenger updates as well. What I do is I put this send to messenger opt-in on all the blog signups, because we were already asking people to sign up for email updates to the blog, but email, it's like 5% open rates or something. Why not use Messenger too? And so what the product does is it just lets you define these things called lead magnets, which you can then add some code to your forms and just have them subscribe automatically. A last kind of cool one is this, they're called Facebook comment guards or autoresponders. So what I do is I set up my posts on Facebook so that if anyone responds to them, I send an autoresponder to them via Messenger, asking them to opt into messaging. So if you want to try this out, just go to bit.ly/Facebook-post-guard, fb-post.guard, and basically it's just like a post that says like, hey, drop a comment, and you'll get a message, an autoresponder via Facebook Messenger, but you're also getting people to sign up for messaging. And then just moving along here, there's different ad formats. Like there's a Facebook send to messenger ad format. I think this is a really interesting format because you can message them back after they click on this ad. So you could send them blog posts and stuff like this, and you can also deploy this technology on your website. So anyone who talks to this chat is also added to your Messenger subscriber list. Okay, so that's my product, Mobile Monkey, and I wanted to just round up my last 2 hacks. One of them is the Unicorn Slush Fund. The Unicorn Slush Fund just says, it's a budgeting hack. It just says most companies have these monthly pay-per-click advertising budgets. So say you have $1,000 to spend on content promotion, and you do like 10 blog posts a month. What most companies will do is they'll say, evenly divide the budget, $100 each, and promote every post, which is pretty ridiculous because most of those blog posts are garbage, and only like 3% of them are going to be great. A Unicorn Slush Fund just says like, finance team, can you give us a little bit of flexibility in how we spend our media budget instead of spending it all, like every post? It would be like playing poker where you have to go all in on every single hand, no matter how bad it was, which is nonsense. You would like to instead have the ability to just stockpile budget and then deploy all in when you have something worthy of going all in on. And then the last idea here is a brand hack for doubling or tripling your click-through rates. Again, that's the key here. You need these high click-through rates. How do you get the click-through rates? 200 to 300 times, 200 to 300% higher. Well, there's all sorts of different ways to raise your click-through rates, but the biggest one, the most impactful way, is to increase your brand affinity. I did some studies of looking at kind of new versus repeat visitors, and what was the difference in click-through rates. So I ran ads targeting like new versus repeat visitors, using the same ads, same keywords, same bids, same position, everything. And the new visitors, so that's like people with less brand affinity because they've never visited you before, they had very, very low click-through rates, but the return people who have higher brand affinity as a result, because they've been to your site before, they had 200 to 3 times higher click-through rates. It's not just 2 to 3 times higher click-through rates, also 2 to 3 times higher conversion rates. And so the hack here is that when you're thinking about the content marketing, if you're just showing up for the very first time when you're doing a search, you've kind of already lost, because they're going to end up clicking on the listing of the company that they've heard on before, or that they heard of before. So that's why like Amazon usually wins, because like people have heard of them. So what you need to do is broaden your content creation and promotion efforts to be a little bit broader beyond just the core keywords in your industry, to connect with people a little bit earlier in the funnel. The way you could do this is do some audience analytics on like what are the interests of the people who you sell to, and what are the broader interests that are outside of that core topic that you sell. So even though I sell chatbots and Facebook Messenger software, I'll do some analysis on my website visitors and my purchasers. And one of the key insights, so this is with Twitter Insights, is that like 70% of my audience is very, very interested in entrepreneurship. And so even though that's not directly related to the products and services I'm selling, I know that my target market has this interest, so I produce a lot of content in that niche, like that's outside of my chatbot niche, and that's just to build up brand affinity with people, so that later when they do decide to buy some Facebook Messenger platform for marketing, they'll have heard of me or my company, because that's how content marketing really works. What we're trying to do is create and promote these memorable, inspirational content to people who match our target audience. People, they're not necessarily going to buy your stuff right then and there, but they will kind of form a bias in their head towards you, a positive bias, and later when they do need to buy your stuff, they'll do either a branded search or they'll do an unbranded search, but will be kind of predisposed towards choosing you over other vendors. So those are my favorite content marketing hacks for 2018 and my theory of unicorn marketing. What does it all mean? I think this is a really interesting way. Thank you everyone for joining us on an epic journey from Donkey Land to Unicorn Land. We're talking about my strategies of unicorn marketing. It's basically a data-driven marketing strategy for 2018 and beyond, wherein we use numbers and data to guide our journey, as opposed to just kind of sticking your finger up in the wind and thinking, let's go this way. We're optimizing for the content that has high engagement, where you have to addition a lot of ideas. It's a numbers game, because most of these ideas will go nowhere, but a few of them will do very well. We're going to find the unicorns. We will then drop the donkeys, eliminate the donkeys, stop wasting time on them, and then sound the unicorn alert on the few ideas that are doing fantastically well. Go nuts, employ Upwork contractors to squeeze more value out of these winning ideas by repurposing them across different channels and different medias, and that is our story. The last thing I will say here is the greatest thing about this strategy is that there is a virtuous cycle. So the first time you execute on a successful unicorn alert, you will generate a tremendous amount of brand affinity. Higher brand affinity means that you've got all these new people who are familiar with you, and so they're going to more likely engage with your content in the future. So you can create this nice feedback loop where it just, the better you do, and around we go, because you're creating brand affinity, and brand affinity is actually a predictor of high click-through rates. So that's everything we had today. Thank you, Upwork. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me to be part of this community, and especially it's just really special for me because I've been a customer of Upwork for many years. Even one of your a company called Odesk before it was acquired by Upwork. So going back a decade even. So thank you for this opportunity. And if there are any questions, we can take them now.
Absolutely. Thanks, Larry. We love having you as a speaker and as a customer. We are going to take one last question. Before that, I want to remind everyone that you will receive the recording tomorrow. So please be on the lookout for that. And with 2 minutes to go, the last question we have is about how long should we ride the unicorn? If you find an article that's working, are there signs that it is being dead? At what point are there diminishing returns that we should, kind of turn off the promotional engine?
Sure. If you recall that webinar thing that I did 5 times, the first time I got 5,000 registrations, the second it was 5,000, and then it kind of started to drop off to like 3 to 2 to 2.5 thousand, registrations. Basically when your unicorn is starting to kind of perform, more or less on par with your regular donkeys, then you've kind of played this out enough. However, you that topic is actually an evergreen unicorn, because Google kind of does the same dumb thing every year. Like around May or June of every year, they release a bunch of features. So I can resurrect that unicorn even this year just by taking the exact same idea, but applying it to the 2018 new features. You follow?
Sure. Yeah, that's really sound advice. I think that's it for the questions. Is there anything else on your end, Larry, or are you good to wrap?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, everyone. And just if you want to learn more about my products, it's at mobilemonkey.com. It's a Facebook Messenger marketing platform.
Awesome, thank you. And if anyone out there is interested in contributed content for Upwork, please visit the hiring headquarters, and we have editors and writers ready to connect with you. Thanks again, Larry.
Awesome. Have a good day.